Episode of Hammered. I'm your host, Michael Bird. Tonight I'm going to be flying solo. No co-host tonight, but that's okay. Tonight on Hammered, we got Trey Ryder. He's going to be talking with us via Zoom from, I think, Western North Carolina, or maybe in South Carolina. Somewhere out that way. Far from here. Far from BFE Studios, ATB Studios. So Trey's with the ACL, the American Cornhole League. Tonight we're going to be talking some bags and what it takes to go from the backyard to the pros, and maybe you'll follow Tiger in the PGA on ESPN one day. Crazy. I was like watching golf, and at 3 o'clock, golf went off and the ACL came on. And the first match was a couple of guys I know, Frank Modlin and Jamie Graham. I played against them a couple of years ago, and they're on ESPN. Hey, how about that? Good for those guys. Next up is myself going one-on-one with ACL's voice of cornhole, Trey Ryder. Stay tuned for that. Here we go. All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? On today's episode of Hammered, I'd like to welcome my guest. If you've ever turned the TV to ESPN and called cornhole on it, you probably said, wow, what is this? I can't believe cornhole is on ESPN. But you've also heard my man right here, the voice of the ACL on ESPN, commentating some of those matches, Mr. Trey Ryder. What's going on, Trey? How you doing, man?
Thank you, Mr. Bird. I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me on the show, and it's cornhole is certainly a little bit more popular over these past few years. So, but yeah, I appreciate having me on the show.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you being on. Crazy, man. The ESPN. It's like I'm sitting back watching PGA golf, and Tiger Woods hits a shot. 3 o'clock comes. Golf goes off and I see cornhole. I'm like, whoa. And some of these people I know, it's like, wow, I played against that guy. Now they're on ESPN right after Tiger. Wow, this is crazy.
Yeah, it still gets surreal for me, honestly, at some points. Sometimes you're moving so quick that you kind of forget to step back and digest it a little bit. And then those moments where I do step back, and now that we're kind of at the end of our season, and I can look back and be like, oh my gosh, look what we just did. Like, we just got the ratings back for our Saturday broadcast, our World Championships, and it was our best rating ever. And it's like, you look at it and you're just like, it still leaves me speechless sometimes.
Yeah, I got to say, man, it's kind of crazy. Coworkers will come up to me because they know they know I played cornhole for a while and traveled the country and played, and they're like, how come I don't see you on ESPN? I'm like, I don't play anymore. And they're like, man, this is crazy, Can't believe cornhole's on ESPN. Well, let me ask you, man, so how have you been? It's been a few years since I actually saw you. I think the last time I saw you, you were running a Calcutta in Knoxville or something, about to lose your mind.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind a few years. I started with the ACL in 2017 in March, and it feels like it's been 10 years, but it's only been a few. And but it's been an incredible few years, just trying to help build the ACL and support the rest of the team, building it from kind of the ground up. I mean, there's obviously the cornhole community was somewhat established, if you will, when the ACL was first founded. But really, just getting the opportunity to help build a brand has been something that's been so rewarding for me, and something I always wanted to do, but I never knew what that was going to be for me. and I'm just glad I found cornhole. But I've been really good. It's been weird balancing a full time and this job at the same time, but it's been a really great couple of years.
Well, that leads me to this question, man. Like, what got you into cornhole to start with? I mean, I know your dad played. I played against your dad a few times and seen you at some tournaments with him. Was that basically it?
Yeah, so everybody's got their story, and they all seem to be somewhat similar. But like honestly, I went to a AAA baseball game in Charlotte where I lived when I was in high school for the Charlotte Knights, right? And so one day my dad and I show up, and they're like, we're having this cornhole tournament, and or my dad and I are like, what is this? And we just see it kind of set up, and people are playing, and we're like, us being the, pretty coordinated. My dad was a two-sport athlete in college. I played baseball and football in high school. So like we knew, we were both athletic for a lack of a better term. We considered ourselves very coordinated. So we're like, oh, we can run through the competition here. And I remember going and these are names that you might remember that general public probably doesn't even remember, but Jeremy Clark and Kipper were there, and I don't know if you ever met those guys out of North Carolina, but they were out of Albemarle Cornhole way back in the day, and they were there, and I remember watching them, and they were just mesmerizing to watch because they could spin the bag, and they were putting 3 out of 4 in the hole, and my dad and I were just mind blown. So, we kind of talked to them a little bit, started practicing. We immediately went home, bought our set of boards, and then actually calendar year later, it took us a whole year later before we actually started getting into it. We went to that same exact tournament, and then you had Danny Blanks was there, and Shane Andrews was there, and Crystal Mann was there, and all these, at the time, the best in the world happened to be from South Carolina. They were there, and we competed against them. They kicked our butts, but they gave us some information on some local tournaments. Cash tournaments, weekly blind draws. We kind of got involved there. We started playing in a local league. We slowly started to get better and better. Unfortunately for me, about a year or two later, I went off to college at Clemson. And so I couldn't play as much, but my dad kept playing. That's why he's so good now, and I suck. That's the excuse I'm using, and that's what I'm sticking to it.
I was going to ask you, what's your skill level right now? If you had to play in a tournament right now, what's your skill level? Where would you finish in a tournament of 64?
Yeah, so I like to classify myself as an upper level competitive player. If we were using our ACL skill levels, so we have pro, advanced, competitive, intermediate, and novice. So I'm kind of above the cornhole players. I'm kind of in that middle range. If you took a 64 tournament and you had the best of the best and some backyard players, I'd like to think I'd finish somewhere in the middle. But honestly, it probably depends on if I've had a few drinks and if I've been practicing a little bit recently.
Oh yeah, it's all about the drinks. A lot of people. I've seen even people on ESPN throwing with a beer in their hand, and I know a lot of people that throw with beer in their hand. But beer, man, it does the exact opposite to me. I cannot play with alcohol in my system. Yeah, I don't know. It's all about focus, and I need all the focus I can get, man.
Well, hey, whatever works. There's some great players that don't drink a drop. So it just whatever works for you.
All right. So, Trey, let's get right into it, man. Tell me about the ACL. What is it about the American Cornhole League that separates itself from other organizations out there? And I know the big thing to say is ESPN, but let's talk other stuff. Tell us about the ACL.
Yeah, so the ACL, American Cornhole League, founded in 2015. We just finished up our 5th World Championships. So the 2020 World Championships 6-day event. It was great. Like you said, the ESPN, obviously the top 2 things, and the other thing I would throw in there is the prize money too. We're really trying to make this coming season $1 million prize pool. That's our honest to goodness goal right now. And so we are fighting tooth and nail to get that done. Right now it's a guaranteed $250,000 like it was last year, but every day that we're going to work is every day that we're trying to get that number to $1 million. That $1 million really it's a selling point, and it's motivation, and it's also, justification that we belong as a major sport and what have you. But I think the one thing that the ACL that I'm really proud to be a part of, and I harp on this a lot, besides our slogan, which is anyone can play and anyone can win, which I'd be glad to talk about. But cornhole really isn't every person's game. But what I really like about being a part of the ACL team is our agility and our ability to understand when things aren't working, they need to change, and when things are working, we need to push the pedal down, and we need to go after it. And so I think that's two different examples for that. When COVID hit, we immediately recognized that almost all major sports are going to be completely shut down this past year. And so what did we do? We said, well, let's not give in. Let's try to find a way to be safe and to put on events that can showcase our best players. And within 4 weeks, we planned out 8 different events across the country, got approval from local governments, got approval from state governments. We got approval from ESPN, made them ESPN events, and literally had 2 guys in a trailer not go home for 2.5 months and drive across the country to each one of these different events. And while the rest of us were flying back and forth from our homes, and I don't think a lot of organizations would be able to pull off something like that. Even some of these bigger organizations, to be able to say, look, we have an opportunity that we can capitalize on. And we know that we can put a great foot forward and do great for our sport. And we just did it. We didn't talk about it. We didn't, stumble over ourselves. We just said, we're gonna do this thing.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but
no, go ahead. Yeah.
That's like really a smart thing to do on ACL's part, because at that time I noticed it. I was like, wow, is this a pre-recorded thing? And I'm like, no, they're wearing masks. Okay, so ACL is still throwing on ESPN. I mean, people were hurting for sports back then. People would watch anything. And there was NASCAR, there was UFC, and UFC was like Saturday nights, and then there's ACL. So a lot of people are watching cornhole because they got nothing else to watch, and they're getting into it. And I'm pretty sure y'all gained a lot more fans just from that time period when there was no NBA, no MLB, no WNBA. So, hey, man, kudos to you guys.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and it just goes back to being able to know what you're good at and just going for it, not being afraid to take chances. That's another thing. It's like I talked about being agile and learning from our mistakes, but the only way you can kind of learn from mistakes is to make those mistakes. You know what I'm saying? And so that's one thing we're not going to be afraid to do ever. Cornhole players hate it, but it's the 10-round game. We've introduced this second type of format. Cornhole is traditionally played to 21. We have our, next season we're going to have our points earning events. All the things that count for standings and the accolades are going to be played to 21 traditional events. But then we're also going to have these made for TV shootout events that are limited to 10 rounds per game. And doing that round limited game allows us to get more pros on TV. It allows us to up the ante a little bit. It makes the matches a little bit more predictable in a 2-hour block, whether it's on ESPN or another network. And so when we first introduced that 10-round game, we were just like, oh, we're going to throw it and use it however we want to, and use it as a tiebreaker, use it as all these different things. And then, we got a lot of feedback from our players. And so one thing that we immediately had to do was we had to listen to our players and say, okay, maybe let's dial it back a little bit here. Maybe there's got to be certain instances where it can be used to benefit, and other instances where it's better to stay traditional with the sport for the sport's sake. So I think, being able to listen to your audience and listen to your player base is something that, and make corrections when we need to, is something that has made me really proud to be a part of the ACL.
I see the pros and the cons of doing the frame system or inning system, however you want to call it. I heard about it, and I was kind of like, okay, it makes sense. You got restraints because you're on TV. Sometimes a game to 21 can last 40 minutes. I mean,
Right.
depends on, man, if you've got guys watching every frame and going point for point, but it also restricts the big comebacks. The
Right.
people coming back from like 17-3 and coming back, and I get it, but I mean, people will evolve with the sport, and I think what ACL is doing right now, I don't think anyone has a problem with like evolving with that league. So hey, man, keep on doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of great people behind the scenes, just trying to do what they can to what's going to be the most relatable to the person at home. Because I think a lot of people forget that there's a lot of audience out there that doesn't know cornhole or isn't involved in cornhole. And so trying to reach those people, those are the people, believe it or not, that are right now going to make the sport ultra successful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if there's only a base of 100,000 players in the country right now, that's not enough to sustain and make this a true major sport. And, people can laugh and think, well, cornhole, not a major sport. But in my eyes, if you don't set that as your goal, then you'll never get there. Okay.
Yeah.
If you do set it as your goal, you still may never get there, but you might get there. And so, for us, that's our ultimate goal. Let's get in the Olympics. Let's become a major sport. Why can't we be bigger than bowling? Bowling doesn't have defense. We got defense in our game. It's more fun to watch than bowling in my eyes. So, I think we got a lot of things going on us.
Bowling is the absolute worst. I cannot sit through a whole game of bowling, man. It's just no excitement to it. But maybe it's because I'm biased because I've played cornhole. I played as a pro for 5 years in another organization, and I traveled the country, and I get it. I see the shots. I know what's going on. But bowling, I'm like, ugh, Pete Weber, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we really have an opportunity. I mean, bowling makes a lot of money.
I know, right?
A lot of money.
I don't understand.
So, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, there are bowlers who make $200,000, $300,000 a year. No reason why in 5 years our pros can't be, maybe not in 5 years, but eventually, 5 years, maybe some of them are making 100, 150,000. I mean, there's no reason not to at this point. I mean, I really don't see a reason not to.
I've seen.
In maybe 10, 15 years, we're matching those bowling salaries.
ACL pros right now are getting agents and getting sponsorships. So I mean, hey man, and ACL is sponsored by Johnsonville. I mean, Johnsonville's no David in this, right? I mean,
right.
Like David and Goliath. I mean, they're big. I mean,
right.
Brats. Who doesn't like a good brat?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so ACL started out as a Carolina Cornhole League or something like that. See, no, what was it? It was something back.
Yeah, so it was two different things. It started kind of as the American Tailgating League, and they had like these big events called like Megagate. That was like they combined like beer pong and cornhole, and then ladder golf. I think it was the other one.
Floops.
Then Stacy Moore, the commissioner, he went off and did within the Carolinas. He did a Carolinas cornhole tour, which is what I think you're thinking of. And that was, I think, sponsored by like Corona Light or something like that.
Yeah.
And he did about 10 or 15 different tournaments within North Carolina. And that was kind of his first dipping the toes into the water of the sport of cornhole in general.
Well, how did you get involved with ESPN? And like, how were you approached, and what did you think? Did you offer your services, or did they say, hey, I know this guy, Trey Ryder, he'd be great for this? How'd that go down?
Yeah. It's a great question. So it's unbelievable, honestly. My dad, you mentioned Eric a few times, so he is an ACL pro now, but my dad kind of got in with Stacy early with the ACL. And I remember him telling me, hey, this new league is coming out, the American Cornhole League. You got to check it out. And to be honest with you, I brushed him off. I was kind of like, dude, I mean, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's just, I'll try to go when I can, but it's just not going to happen. So, But eventually he kind of started talking to me. And he's like, you got to at least come to an event with me. Let's go to one of their national events. I said, okay, let's go. He said, it's going to be on ESPN3. And so I said, oh my gosh, that's really cool. So it was in Norfolk, Virginia. And so I went with my dad. We went up, I played, I did okay, not great. I did okay. They broadcasted the event on ESPN3. My dad actually made the ESPN3 broadcast. That you can see me in the background cheering them on, what have you. And when we went afterwards and rewatched the broadcast, let's just say the broadcast didn't go great. And so immediately after that, about a week later, my dad texts me. And actually, sorry, my best part of the story, funniest part of the story, I literally remember sitting in the hotel room and looking at my dad, and I said, Dad, I know I have never, ever in my life done any type of broadcasting, but I think I could actually do this. Like, I think I could, do this better than what I'm seeing right now. And we both kind of joked about it. My dad's like, yeah, you're so logical. You think about the game way too much. That's why you get in your own head all the times, blah, blah, blah. And we kind of made a joke out of it. And then sure enough, a week later, he sends me a text. I'll never forget it. He goes, you won't believe this, but Stacy is looking for another color commentator. Would you be interested? And I was like, I got that text and I was like, maybe. And he's like, well, he wants people to submit like a video of themselves recording themselves just talking about the game, talking about why they'd want to be a color commentator. He said they sent that out to about 7 different people. I remember getting that text. I was on vacation with my wife. I had to set up this little camera in a hotel room in like Greenville, South Carolina, and sit there and record and talk about what I think about the game and how I love it, and things I would bring to a broadcast, that sort of thing. Sure enough, about a week and a half later, I'm sitting at my full-time job. I get a call from a North Carolina number, and I answer it, and it's Stacy Moore, and he's like, we liked your tape. We want to give you a shot. Do you want to go to Las Vegas in a month and a half and do ESPN3 broadcast? And I said, absolutely, because I'd never been to Vegas, and it was an opportunity to get out there. Flew out to Vegas the next month, and we did the ESPN broadcast, and I clicked immediately. I was nervous as hell, but I clicked immediately with the play-by-play guy. We had a decent broadcast. I thought at the time it was pretty good. I watched it back now. I'm like, that was terrible, but it was good enough for then. And sure enough, about 2 weeks later, we get the call from ESPN that they want to put us on ESPN2 for our first ever television broadcast. And really from there, the rest is history.
When you put that headset on and put that microphone in front of you, were you like thinking to yourself, oh God, don't screw this up. Don't say something stupid.
Yes. Well, really, I was more worried about like completely blanking, and because honestly, the hardest part is still to this day are your opens and your exits. Now, thankfully, I don't have to do the exits or the closings because I'm not the play-by-play guy. But still to this day, the most difficult part for me are those opens where you're on camera and the thoughts you're supposed to give are generally they're not scripted by any means. I'm not reading off a script or anything like that, but it's like, here's what we want to talk about. Let's focus on these things. And so I find myself like thinking about that a lot. I'm like, okay, make sure you say exactly this, or you make sure you're sticking to this type of general thought. And so I was more nervous for that in the intro, and then when the play-by-play is going to go, oh, we're here in Las Vegas, Nevada for the national number 5, the ACL, Trey Ryder, how are we doing today? I just didn't want to be like, good. Like I just, because I knew I had a little bit of confidence that I was just going to be able to talk about cornhole once we got rolling. And that's still true to this day. Once we get rolling, it's no more nerves, because I don't feel like the camera's on me. I feel like I'm more in a conversation in my own bubble, I'm just talking about the game that I already know a lot about and I've had a lot of experience with. So it just becomes something that it becomes a lot more comfortable. It's just those initial thoughts that can be real nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I totally get that, because nothing's worse than opening a show. I don't care if it's a podcast or a YouTube show. My openings are the worst.
Yep.
I've had to take several takes. I'm surprised we didn't do like 3 or 4 with this. But,
yeah, they're hard.
Yeah, well, it really is, man. It's like you put yourself on the spot, and your brain sometimes locks up, and you're like, hey, I need some oil in there. Squirt, squirt.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, man, and I'm going to give you props. You've got a talent, man, for describing shots, and you're very articulate when you do so. So at what point, man, did you realize, shit, I got this? This is too easy. This is not that hard. Like, you have a way of putting on your board, like your Madden screen is what I call it, when you take your marker and you write the position where the bag is going to travel and all this. It's like how did you realize you could do this like that?
It took me a few broadcasts. To be honest, the first time I felt in a groove was actually the first time that they gave me the Telestrator. So that's what they call it, the Telestrator. And that was in Vegas, 2018. My first ever broadcast was actually in Vegas 2017. That's when I was on the Link Casino. I'm scared shitless up there on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go to our broadcast July of 2017, and that's our first ever on live TV. So that went from digital E3 to live television E2. So that I'm as nervous as it can be on that one as well. The next one I did wasn't until the fall, where we did a college one. And still that one, I'm trying to feel out, the feel. I'm trying to get an understanding for how things work. And then round that out into the spring. That's when the chaos happened in Florida, 2018. And that's a whole different story for another day. That was a catastrophe of an event. So I didn't feel comfortable there. And then in Vegas 2018, they gave me the Telestrator. By then I had a little bit of chemistry, and I'm like, okay, I think I got this. And I still look back to, some of my calls in that one. And I look back to my calls pre-Vegas 2018, and I'm like, oh, it kind of make me cringe. But I watch Vegas, and I'm like, that's pretty good. You still had a lot of, because I constantly want to get better. So I do listen to myself a lot, just to try to understand how, the worst thing ever is when I listen to a highlight clip and I'm like, oh my God, you screwed that up so bad. The clip would have got 10 million views if you didn't just shut the hell up halfway, before the clip happened or something like that.
We are our own worst critics. Yes.
Yes. But, I look at that Vegas as kind of a jumping point where, it really got real for me. And I felt like I had a decent grip as to what I was doing.
Have you developed like a catchphrase or anything yet? Like for a certain shot, when you get excited, Madden had boom. You got to have something. You got to develop that.
People, again, I don't think about it. I really don't. But if I'm doing a play-by-play role, or if I'm taking the call, for some reason I like to say he got it. And I like yell that he got it or something like that. And then apparently I say ridiculous a lot. People love and then are you kidding me? Those apparently I say those all the time, because those are the ones that people always, they'll come up to me like ridiculous. And I'm like, oh, did I say that again? Like I wasn't even thinking about it. So those are the three that probably most commonly come out of my mouth.
Wow. There may be like a strand of your sound clips being played on this after the show. So since you've been doing this gig with ACL and ESPN, have you met any people, any celebrities, anybody of note?
Yeah, so I mean, a good, I mean, we just, one thing that was really cool, just being with the ACL, I just got a chance to meet Jorge Masvidal of the UFC. He came down to our event. And that was a big one for us to have him there. He did a great speech for our ACL pros. I got to, I've been in the backstage of the Today Show back when we were on Coney Island. So I got to meet, Megan Kelly, and I got to meet a couple other people back there. We did Super Bowl this past, in January, where I met Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones. That was really cool, to meet some starting NFL quarterbacks and get to know them. We did a Jimmy Graham tournament for 2 years back to back. I got to meet Jimmy Graham. I actually he sat down with me. Well, that was one of the coolest experiences, is like he sat down right next to me as I'm doing like a Facebook Live broadcast. He's like, I'm going to call this game with you. And that was really cool. I got to pick his brain when it comes to football and cornhole, and that was, we did an ACL charity day last year where I got to meet some celebrities like Tito Ortiz was there. That was really cool to meet him and pair up with him. Sean Latham, $20 chef from Barstool Sports, had a chance to call the match with him as well. So I've been real fortunate, to meet a lot of great people. We have a great PR guy for our league, Marlon LeWinter. He worked for Under Armour, was the personal brand guy for both Venus Williams and Steph Curry for a number of years. Has worked alongside the Today Show for a number of years. Actually proposed to his wife on the set, live on TV for the Today Show. Marlon's, he's been incredible. He's able to reach out and get it done. I mean, he amazes me with the amount of people that he can just pull into the sport, and a lot of because people just love cornhole and they want to play and they want to get around it.
Well, you've made it, Trey, when you're on Hammered with Mike Bird.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. I love it.
So let's get into the ACL and next season. When does the ACL season start? And give us some states where you guys are going to be this year. And how do I join the ACL?
Yeah. So the format for this year, especially for those at home that are looking to kind of watch and keep up with our top level pros. Really, our season technically starts for play in September. I mean, we don't have an off season. You can play cornhole anytime, anywhere, but our pro season for our top level pros will start in January. We generally have 4 nationals a year. And for that first one, it's more than likely probably going to be in the Tampa area. Because that's where the Super Bowl is. Each year we like to do something alongside the NFL. We've done it for the past 2 years. And that's why Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones were able to come out and do Super Bowl with us the day before Super Bowl. And so we did that. So we'll probably be in Tampa because that's where the NFL will have their Super Bowl event in January. And then our full schedule releases September 30th of this year for the spring and the summer for next season, or for this coming season, but in 2021. We try to hit different places. We try to spread them out regionally, those 4 national events. And then new this year are these shootout events that we're going to be hosting. That'll be more of a summer series that we're looking forward to bringing some more information of. I wish I had like all of those dates and all those times to give you immediately. We're working on finalizing those, but if you want to keep, the good news is if you are, you're watching, you're saying, I do want to get involved. Easiest place to go, iPlayACL.com. Two places to look. Number one is events. You can click on events at the top. You can find events in your area, in your region. And you can search by zip code. You can search by location. And then if you don't see any in your area, it doesn't necessarily mean there aren't any. It just means the director is a little bit too lazy to put them out on the website ahead of time. So then you can click on the directors tab and you can find the closest director to you, reach out to them and get you plugged in that way. And that's kind of the first step, is just getting plugged in a local league. And then, of course, just, following us on social media for all the big events, staying tuned in on how you can watch us on TV. We're Facebook, facebook.com/iPlayCornhole. We're on American Cornhole League @American Cornhole League. And then Twitter @iPlayCornhole as well.
All right. Hey, I got Trey Ryder here from the ACL on ESPN. He is the voice of cornhole across the nation right now. He was mentioning I Play Cornhole. I have a ticker. It's going across the screen right now. You'll see the website up there. You go to iPlayCornhole.com and you will find everything ACL there. I believe Trey was saying you can find the schedule there coming up. Anything you need to know. And I do have one question. You mentioned pros. What's the criteria to be an ACL pro? What does it take to come from the backyard to ESPN?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this past season was a little bit, it kind of put a wrench in our plans as far as the traditional qualification process because of COVID. But for example, if you want to be a pro in 2021, 2022, that's going to be the next season that someone can qualify. Really, there's two main ways to do it. The number one is to finish in the top 24 of non-pro, we call open standings throughout the entire season. You finish top 24 in those standings by playing in open events, conference events, regional events, and local events. Boom, you're an ACL pro. Following season, you get an invite to the division, you get sent a contract, and you come on board. Option number two is very similar to golf. We do have one very gritty, very high stakes Q school, if you will, at the end of the year. We call it our ACL Pro Qualifier, and it's one tournament. It's very intense. It's not a traditional double elimination tournament. It's what we call a rounders format, which is like a progressive round robin. You play 8 games. Better you play, the more difficult opponents you play. And if you finish in the top 32 of that pro qualifying event, then you also get an invite to become an ACL pro. Combine that with all the pros that get to retain their pro card from the previous season, and you get a yearly maximum of 256 pros per season. So it's really high stakes. It's really competitive, but I think that's how we like it, and that's how it should be.
Hey, so if you're watching this or listening to this in your car, if you think you're the best cornhole player and every town has this guy or girl, they think, oh man, who's that guy? Oh, I can take him out, no problem. And then it's 21-0. Every time, every town has that person that thinks they're the best until they run into somebody that's played competitive cornhole. So if you're that guy or that girl, go to iPlayCornhole.com, register with the ACL, and hey, see what you got. See what you got out there. Hey, and Trey, before I let you go, man, I want to know, since you've been a commentator on with the ACL, what has been your favorite moment? Either something you called, something you witnessed on TV. What's the thing you remember the most?
Man,
and can I find it on YouTube?
That is a great question. I think I gotta narrow it down to 2.
Okay.
I just got to. One is kind of a cheesier answer, but it means a lot to me, is the times when I've been able to call my dad's games. I mean, that's been really, really special and really, really cool, and something that when I think about it, might be one of the only times in sports history where a son has been able to commentate a father's game. I mean, sometimes you get dads in the booth, they get to commentate, their son, but being the other way around, it's unique in that aspect, and it means a lot. I'm really close with my dad, so especially when he went through a lot of health issues this past season, and when he came back and fought through all that, and I got to commentate his game in Rock Hill. You can listen to the broadcast. It was pretty emotional for me, but now that I've gotten the cheesy answer out of the way and the a little bit mushy answer, then, I think one of the most monumental events and one of the monumental shots that we have was in a game in which he lost. Damon Dennis hits this, what we eventually deemed an and one shot. Scott Phillips had a bag sitting on the back of the hole. Damon Dennis throws the airmail, knocks Phillips' bag off, and goes in at the same time. And that shot went absolutely viral. And that really created our next level of explosion on social media and in television. It really legitimized it because it was shared by every sports outlet. It was revered as a cold-blooded cornhole shot. I mean, it was something that, never before was the sport taken seriously as a highly skilled event on an ESPN network than it was right there. The other times it was covered, it was like, oh, look, it's cornhole on ESPN because they have nothing else to do, no other time to fill. But that time, It just felt like on July 4th, in front of one of our biggest audiences ever, one of the biggest shots that was shown across the world. And it really exploded us. And it's on our YouTube page. Damon Dennis and one shot cornhole or something like that.
Damon Dennis and one shot. I believe we are about to start watching it right now as we speak. Damon Dennis, he's a great player in his own right. I've seen him at an airmail box competition. He was killing it, man. He made probably like 10 or 12. Can't even remember. Everybody was standing there with their eyes like this. Like, wow, what's going on?
I mean, it was incredible. I mean, really incredible, and it was huge for our sport.
Well, Trey, man, I want to appreciate it that you being on the show. I want to thank you, man. Hopefully we can do this again. I look forward to the upcoming season. I hope maybe I'll see you out there. I think I'm going to give it a shot and play a little ACL this year. It's time for Bird to come out of retirement.
I love it. I appreciate you having me. It's been a blast, and and anytime you shoot the invite over, I'll make any time that I can.
You got it, man. All right, everybody, that was Trey Ryder. You can hear him this coming up, the 2021 ACL season on ESPN. Trey, call him straight out there, man, and come up with that big catchphrase. We can't wait to hear it.
I appreciate it, Bert. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for joining us today on Hammered. We'll be back next time with some more fun guests. Maybe some more cornhole players. We don't know yet. We're still digging in. I'm thinking I'm going to get Pete Weber on the next show. Ask him about cornhole and how he feels about them moving in on his territory. All right. Peace out, ATB.